From Washington, D.C., welcome to the Harness Racing Alumni Show. I'm Freddie Hudson, and I'm here today with Trade Martin and Bob Marks.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show with your host, Freddie Hudson and Trade Martin.
This week's Alumni Show is brought to you by Bill Houghton, insuring standardbreds and farms for over 40 years. Bill knows the ins and outs of equine insurance. Make sure your equine investments are protected. Call or text Bill at 954-655-5547. That's 954-655-5547. Call Bill now.
Freddie, tell us about the yearlings at the sales by Huntington Farms.
Huntington Farms, selling their 2021 yearlings at the Lexington Select Sale, October 5th through the 9th, and the Harrisburg Sale, November 8th through the 12th. For more information, call 859-987-3983, Huntington Farms. Email huntingtonfarm@cs.com. Joining us today is Eric Jerry, a standardbred breeder and owner, and the co-founder of Ongait.com, who this month is celebrating their 20th year in business. Eric, welcome on our show.
Glad to be here.
Well, Eric, first of all, congratulations on Ongait's 20th anniversary. Well, I guess like 20 years ago, you and Maurice Kodash came up with the concept of having an online auction of standardbreds. How did that evolve?
Well, at the time we were doing national race line, before the days of the internet, people would actually call a phone to hear the race. And we're doing it for many years. And one day Maurice came to me and said, Eric, I really think that the Internet's the future. I go, I agree. I was also involved with an internet billing company at the time. He says, I went ahead and I came up with the idea of having an online sales site named Ongait.com. Do you want to be partners? I go, I'd love to. Just like that. I said, tell me about it. So at the time, we were doing just listings because the technology for auctions really wasn't really developed yet, and not to the degree that we'd want it. So we went ahead, and for the first few years, 5, 6 years, we did listings rather, and then we converted to auctions. And people would always say, well, no one's going to buy a horse online. No one's going to bid online. They won't see the horse. They have to be there. And like I always say about many things, is that things don't happen or can't happen until they do. And then that becomes the new norm. In this case, the new norm took, quite a few years to be accepted. But now we have literally thousands of registered bidders. We were the first to market. And there have been a few people along the way that have tried, even recently to compete. But the truth is, why would somebody want to put a horse on a site where they have no bidders? I mean, I would say one of the most important things, the important thing in an auction is not only to have a product, but have bidders. So, we've succeeded. We've gotten over the hurdle. And when we've done certain things like, auction of Atlanta, obviously this thing with COVID, canceled a few sales. We were a great alternative just waiting in the wings. We had been growing every single year anyway, but that I think gave us even a little more stimulus.
Well, getting back to Atlanta, my sources tell me that that produced 26,000 views, and she sold for $1.5 million. Tell us how that came out. How did that come about?
1.575 million. A few of the partners wanted to sell, and without having to wait for a sale to come up, it could be done expeditiously, much more economically, and reach a much larger audience. So that's pretty much how it happened, and the partners agreed, and it ended up going for $1,575,000, and we did have over 26,000 views on her page worldwide.
Boy, that's great. And you're coming off a record year of $15 million. How does this year look?
We're well past that at this point.
Wow.
We're selling lately. We've been selling over $100,000 a day worth of horses. Not every day, but at least 5 to 6 days a week, and some days we hit 200,000. So I would say this next 12 months, I think we're looking at more in the 25 to 30 million range.
I know that one of the changes that you made is that you basically have a 2-minute pause after the last bid.
Oh, well, a few years ago we lowered it from 5 minutes to 2 minutes. So this way no one ever gets shut out. The auction ends when people, decide to stop bidding, not when the clock runs out.
Correct. And I also see that Ongait.com has a lot of charity events that are up there now. We do it. We work with most organizations these days. It's quick. It's easy for them. And they find they get actually more money, and more, donations or purchases, whatever you want to call them. But they get more when they put it on Ongait than if they just try to do it themselves. Okay. And what type of plans does Ongait have for the future? We're just, our goal is to keep getting bigger and better. We're never satisfied. Basically life and business, you either evolve or die. So to us, we're going to keep evolving, see what the market, what would be good for the market, what the market requires, and we're going to try to be the first ones there to do it. I see certain things like the London sale this year is going virtual again. Last year they were the only ones that I know of that every consignor actually did better than the year before. It's no horses get sick, no horses get hurt. Look, there are certain sales like Lexington that are still a pleasure to go to, and I hope they never disappear. But for many, if you're selling a moderately priced horse, especially, the economics just don't, are just so much better this way. Absolutely. And now moving over to the racing side of our business, what do you think needs to be done to make racing more interesting and competitive in the future?
Well, okay. There's so many things. I mean, it's a combination basically of satisfying both the owner and the bettor. And sometimes their interests aren't exactly the same. But in our case, I always ask people, what should win the race? You think it should be the best horse, the best driver, combination? And inadvertently, most people just say combination. And I kind of disagree. I think we have drivers because horses don't race themselves. But I think, to me, the best horse on that day, not necessarily the favorite, but the best horse should be the one that wins. And, today there's such a bias with post positions at different racetracks that we've almost become a 1-mile sprint in many cases. That if you take away and you get away near the back of the pack, you got to be pretty fortunate to be able to close. You need the track bias in your way, the post position, the tempo. What I would love to see, it's not going to happen, but what I'd love to see would be just a mile straightaway. Post wouldn't matter. Get cover if you want it. Go to the front. Do this. Do that. But almost like a 1-mile straightaway would be amazing. But assuming that doesn't happen, we have to do things to make it good for the bettor. Such as it's a joke up in Canada, what they call the fair start pole. If a horse makes a break all the way up the stretch and it's past the fair start pole, it's no refund. People, it's entertainment. People are supposed to feel like they get a good bang for their buck. And I really think that things like if a horse makes a break up to the first turn, we should refund their money. And maybe not in cash. Give them a credit for the next race. But do something where they feel they get value. But we need to make the races competitive. We need to make things, even like in stake races with eliminations, we should make it where they have to be competitive and not just qualify, because people are betting money on this. So, there's a conflict between owners and bettors. I think we have to start addressing the bettors because, it's nice to get subsidies because we are valuable economically to the different, different jurisdictions. We are, they definitely bring money in to everything like breeding awards and, incentives to keep your horses in states. Definitely does work. It brings money there. But we have to make it where we can stand totally on our own, and we have to do things to think of the better, not just the short term. And we just don't think of the better enough these days. I think it's starting to turn in that direction. Hopefully it happens sooner rather than later.
Yeah, I know a lot of bettors are complaining about the drivers giving the courtesy tucks. What's your view on that?
Yeah, I've been a big proponent of against that. One of the things I've said many times is that if drivers want to be polite, they should become maitre d's. And basically, I think that when they go, I don't care if they drive to the racetrack together. When they're on that track, they're there fighting for the owner, the trainer, the bettor, and they're supposed to be out there to kill. And one of my pet peeves is I don't remember the last time I've seen a driver put in an objection. I want them, if they're interviewed after the race, I want them if they lost because something happened, I want them to be pissed. I remember when Bill O'Donnell, went on after with Nyland, I hate to say it, but his no shit line. Okay, the truth is, he was pissed. Okay, and for whatever the reasons, he was pissed. And all I could say is that these drivers, they need to put objections in. When's the last football game you've seen where you don't see someone complaining about a call to the ref or jumping up and down, or when the benches used to, empty in a baseball game when the pitcher got hit with the ball or something? People, you want that emotion. You want that raw emotion as part of our sport. Not just get on politely, and just let somebody in because he's stuck on the outside because he might do it to you next time. That shouldn't come into the equation. So I think that closing the holes is a very good first step. But I think as much as that, the attitude. I mean, if someone pulls to the outside, they should have to move immediately. Not sit there fishing for cover for 10 seconds or 15 seconds, or whatever it is. They give it 3 seconds to move. Okay, so I just think that we have to show the emotion, and when you're there, let the bettor and the owners and the trainers all see that every driver is there to win and do the best they can, not to be polite where everyone knows it's scripted on how the race is going to go.
Yep. I remember many years ago watching many fist fights after a race between drivers, and one just jumps in my mind. Billy Popfinger and Marcel Filion had a fist fight. They were rolling in the dirt and had to be broken up. And actually, I think Henry was pulling Marcel off, and Frank was pulling Billy off.
Well, I don't remember that one, but you know something? Too bad it's not a video. We should show that in between races.
That would be a good one.
The last and the only objection I ever remember, and I've been at this for well over 50 years, was a year ago or 2 years ago when Yannick actually objected against David Miller. Yannick was driving Tall Dark Stranger, and David Miller was on Pappy Rob Hanover, and they took Pappy Rob down. That was the only objection I can ever remember.
Yeah, and I object to no objections. I just think it's wrong. I think maybe the solution is that the trainer should be allowed to, I don't know if they are, but they should be allowed to object when they see something. Or every horse maybe should have like a representative that's allowed to object, if the driver doesn't. I don't even know if a trainer could object. I doubt it. I've never heard of it. But maybe they should be allowed to if they can't. But I just think it's, I love, when a trainer will give you a call, well, the driver told me we got cut off, or the driver told me he had a wheel on him, or the driver told me he got interfered with. And I said, now why the hell didn't you say something? And I also think the way we just, you didn't ask, but I think the way that we distribute the funds after an inquiry where a horse is taken down and places change is wrong. I think that, I've said this before, but I think that if a horse gets taken down, that the parimutuel way we handle it today is totally correct. I wouldn't change that. But the way the money gets dispersed, I think, a week or two after the race, within a week or two, a committee or the judges or, whoever get together and look to see which horse or horses were impeded or injured during the race. And that's how the difference in money gets allocated. I mean, basically, Bob, if I went ahead and I punched you in the face, okay, and then the court awarded that I was wrong, they give the money to Fred. I mean, if it's the two horses that, get reversed, then of course they should get the extra money. But if you have a horse who's nowhere near the infraction, all of a sudden they pick up an extra purse check, and the horse that got knocked out, gets condolences. I just think that's wrong.
Well, my next question over here, what are your thoughts about the drivers nowadays traveling on the same plane between stakes engagements on the same day and then going up there and coming back?
You know, the one thing I give them a lot of credit for, more than even sometimes how they drive in a race, is, I mean, you have to be tough. You know, you turn on your TV or your computer, you know, or wherever, and you see the same driver, like 2 or 3 tracks on the same day. I mean, I can understand how they get into a race, and sometimes they get, you know, brain fog or race fog or whatever you want to call it. It's almost like, okay, the next one, get on the plane, go. Next one. I can imagine. Yeah, I know they get into a routine. I give them credit, especially guys, you know, getting older. When you're not, you know, young with all that vim, vigor, and all that energy. But I definitely imagine that their schedules, it's really pretty impressive, I think, how they bounce around from track to track. And it has to be pretty hard to focus on that horse. You know, for the owner and the trainer, every race is important. You know, you wait for your horse to get in, get Jordan in, you look at the program, and to you, that race is the utmost importance. But for most drivers, and I have to say kudos to them, they do a great job in general. But many times you could just see that they just didn't pay attention to the race, or they didn't know their competition, because they drive so much in so many places. I think it does definitely affect them, and versus a local guy that's just driving, you know, that track for the day. And many times the local guy in an overnight race does well, just because you know, he doesn't have the burden of going from place to place. You know, one of the people in mind who's obviously a very talented driver and a good guy that made the decision years ago not to travel is Dave Pallone. You know, I mean, he racks it up. His lifestyle is totally different, I imagine, than all these other guys. And everyone, you know, does what they want and what's right for them. But it's just pretty impressive to watch them go from time to time. And sometimes you have to give a driver slack if it's the third, you know, it's sort of the end of the card of the third track of the day or the second track of the day, and they get a little bit, you know, I won't say loopy, but just a little bit out of it. It's rough. So it's hard.
Okay, so this is my last question now. From a bettor's perspective, what do you think of the multiple partnerships with multiple trainers?
Okay, so I really feel that even though it would hurt to handle, I really think that they should do entries. It would hurt to handle, but there's just too many. It's crazy to think that sometimes that there isn't a plan of a strategy, because, you know, the same trainer has both times. Now, I will say, I think overall it's been pretty good in what I've seen in overnight races, where, you know, I see the common ownership or common trainers where one horse will attack the other. So I will say that's good, but you want to take away the element of conspiracy, so to speak, the thought of conspiracy. And I just think from a legitimacy standpoint that there should be entry. You know, it should be an entry. Or maybe you do something I never thought of before. But maybe you do something that's just a modification, where if someone bet on a horse and maybe they don't get the win price, but if the other entry wins, they get a refund, or, you know, on their bet, it pays less. You know what I mean? Then the bet pays less, or something. But I don't know. It just seems to me that there is definitely a conflict of interest. Bettors are aware of it, but I'm just not sure long term it's the smartest thing. You know, I know we have a shortage of horses, and that's going to get worse, not better. You know, especially, there's a whole other subject about how much money we give to claimers. But, you know, there's a shortage of horses, so we need to fill the boxes. And obviously, the less betting entries, the less handle. So, you know, it's not an easy solution or question, because it's happening more and more because of the shortage of horses. But it's something that needs to be addressed and really thought out long term as well as short term.
No, absolutely. Hey, Bob, do you have anything that you wanted to throw in here?
I think we've covered just about everything.
And Trey?
By the way, I will say, if you got a minute, I will say one more thing.
Sure.
About this.
All right,
just expound a little bit. You got it? All right. So basically, you know, I love to see claimers go for good money. I like to see every class go for good money. But some of the latest, where the claimers are going up to their claiming price, I think is putting the money and the purse money in the wrong place. I think somewhere about 60% of their claiming price would be a good number. And the reason I say that, if we make it so easy for somebody to get a horse and race for that kind of purse, in many cases as much or close to the purse of a secondary stake, then there's no incentive for people to buy the yearlings and train them for 8 or 9 months and hope to get into a race where you can win a race. And then if they don't pay as much for the yearlings, the people will breed less, and long term, it's just going to make our horse shortage situation even worse. So it looks like a great thing to be able to have purses high on a claimer, but what we should do is take the young horses that get to the track and raise their purses instead, to such a higher number. One of the ideas that I've had is that we should have a maiden go for the same purse as an open at every racetrack, whatever that is, and winner take all. No more these second, third, second, so they, milk the class a little bit, which we all know goes on. But basically, winner take all. So it would be a nice shot in the arm for a guy that just is, or a girl who's been, having the horse this whole time, have dreams to win the first race and win $20,000 or $30,000, right? But to give that much money to claimers, I think it very possibly could have a long-term detrimental effect on and expound the shortage we already are facing.
I know that when I was racing and training horses, the cap was 75%. A claimer could only go for 75% of the purse. And also, when you claimed the horse, you had to race him at a higher class for 30 days before you could drop him down, which sort of balanced things out. And that basically kept people like, well, maybe I don't want to claim this horse because he's going to have to claim him for 12.5 after racing in 15s.
Or maybe if you put him back in the same class, he has to draw the 1 or 2 outside posts. I don't know. But it just has to be something. So not to decentivize somebody from breeding or buying young horses. Because without, the reason for stake races really isn't for high purses for young horses. If we didn't have stake races, there wouldn't be horses around to race later, because all the horses that primarily don't make it in the stakes are your overnight horses. There wouldn't be any incentive for people. No one's going to breed a 4 or 5-year-old to be in a 25 claimer. Okay, so if we stop the people from breeding, we're out of business, because no one's going to breed the horses to have a 5-year-old claimer, a 4-year-old claimer. So I just think that's it's a good intention, step in the wrong direction.
Okay. I've always felt that the thoroughbreds, we should simply follow them. You can see sometimes their maiden races could go for 80 or 100,000. Consequently, the yearling buyer, who does not necessarily have a stakes horse, but he's racing his horse as a maiden or in non-winners of 1 or non-winners of 2, he at least has a chance to get some of that yearling purchase back. He has an incentive. Right. As opposed, and I totally agree, that no, the claimers should not be high pursed. They should not.
Absolutely. Hey, Trey, you got anything to add in here?
I like what Ed is saying, but, the things that you were talking about, Ed, are very complex routines to really take effect. But they were good thoughts.
No, I was saying that here, when people say things are complex, I say, in 1969 we landed on the moon using slide rules, no computers. I agree with you, but I think, we just got to figure out ways to keep going forward and not be satisfied with the status quo ever.
If you're buying or selling your home, Joe Rico is your go-to guy. Joe has been representing buyers and sellers on Long Island for 30 years. He is an expert in all types of sales. Don't settle for average. Call or text Joe Rico today at 516-524-4870. That's Joe Rico at 516-524-4870.
Freddie, why don't you give everyone his email address?
That's Joe Rico, C21 @yahoo.com. Well, that brings us to a close of this week's show. Eric, thank you so much for being this week's guest, and congratulations on Ongait's 20th anniversary.
Thank you very much.
That's a wrap for this week's broadcast of the Harness Racing Alumni Show. Thanks for listening, and don't forget to tune in next week.
The Harness Racing Alumni Show.